Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we'll dive into the night Alex discovers Tu Na and baby Henry have vanished, leaving only a DNA result and a heartbreaking letter behind, just as his biggest business contract is about to collapse. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next episodes. That night, Alex barely slept. He drove around the farm all night, from the dirt road leading to the highway, around the small hamlets, to the bus station, and the makeshift awnings along the road. Whenever he saw a light, he stopped and asked a quick, familiar question. Did you see a girl carrying a baby, about a few months old, pass by here tonight? The answers were almost always the same. A few apologetic shakes of the head, a few "I can't see you." Who would take the child out in this rain? Each time Alex's heart sank a little more. He looked at the clock. The minute hand kept moving, from 1, 2, 3 in the morning. The rain still showed no signs of stopping, and the road he needed to find Tu Na seemed to be endlessly long. By dawn, when the sky had just changed color, his eyes were stinging, his body was cold, his clothes were soaked. He knew that if he kept trying, he might not find Tu Na, but on the contrary, he might end up lying in the middle of the road. Finally, Alex had to turn the car around, grit his teeth, and accept to stop searching, his heart filled with a heavy feeling of helplessness. As soon as he got home, the first person he saw was his sister. Seeing his brother walk in with a disheveled appearance, wet hair, sunken eyes, she frowned. "Where did you go last night that you're just coming back now? To the farm again?" Alex had no more strength to explain. He just finished with one sentence. "I have urgent business at the scene. I'll talk to you later. Let me take a shower first. My body is freezing." Alex turned the wheel into the muddy side road that led up to the farm. The wipers scraped back and forth, pushing away sheets of rain, but they did nothing for the knot in his chest. Maybe he was overthinking, he told himself. Maybe Tu Na was still there. But the closer he got, the less he believed it. The farm appeared out of the darkness, the faint outline of the fence, the metal gate, the small house at the back. Usually when he pulled up, there was a sliver of light at the window, or the soft sound of Henry crying. Tonight, everything was black. Alex killed the engine but left the headlights on. The beams cut across the yard, revealing puddles, wet grass, and the narrow path to the back room where Tu Na and Henry slept. He stepped down, shoes sinking into mud, and hurried toward the door. "Tu Na," he called softly. "It's me." No answer. He tried again, louder. Still nothing. A chill ran down his spine. He reached for the handle. It turned easily. The door wasn't even locked. The weak yellow light flickered on when he hit the switch. The first thing he saw was the empty bed. The blanket was still rumpled, like someone had gotten up not long ago. Henry's small pillow lay where it always did, but the baby was gone. The corner where Tu Na kept her bag and clothes looked wrong. One hook was empty. The old backpack she always carried had disappeared. Alex's heart dropped. For a moment, he just stood there, hoping he was misreading everything. Then he forced himself to move, checking the tiny bathroom, the corner by the water jar, even behind the flimsy curtain. "Tu Na?" His voice cracked. "Henry?" Silence. That was when he saw the envelope on the table. It lay beside the folded DNA paper, as if she had left the two together on purpose. His name was on the front in her small, careful handwriting. Alex stared at it, then picked it up with fingers that suddenly felt clumsy. The note inside was short. Her handwriting was shaky, some strokes darker where the pen had dug in. She thanked him for everything he had done for her and Henry, said she would never forget that he had taken them in when they had nowhere to go. She apologized for bringing trouble to his family, for becoming a burden in the eyes of his mother and sister. She wrote that someone like her, a divorced woman with a baby and a messy past, had no right to stand next to someone like him. And at the end, the line that cut straight through him, "Mse ji chokach, je an kon jong ma song." I'll leave, so you still have a life ahead of you. Alex closed his eyes, the words burning. He looked at the DNA paper beside the letter. The cold conclusion that there was no biological relationship between Tu Na and Johnny suddenly felt heavier than any contract on his desk. He had planned to explain slowly, to tell her why he and Johnny had done the test and why they had hesitated. But he had waited too long. The truth hadn't come from his mouth. It had come from a paper she found when he dropped it. And now, she was gone. "This is my fault," he whispered, fingers digging into the edge of the table. "I left her alone with all those doubts. I let my family talk like that around her. I did this." His mother's warning echoed in his head. Tu Na was complicated. People would gossip. Bringing her into their home would cause trouble. His sister's voice followed. "If you have feelings for her, drop them. Think about the family." He had tried to pretend his feelings were just sympathy. He kept telling himself there would be time later to explain, to stand up for her, to choose her openly. He kept pushing everything important to later. Now later had turned into too late. Alex grabbed his phone and dialed her number. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again and again. No answer. He looked around the room for clues. Her slippers were gone. Henry's extra blanket was missing. A few baby outfits had disappeared from the clothesline. She hadn't taken much, just enough to survive a few days. It meant she didn't have a real destination. She had just run. "Think," he muttered. "If you were Tu Na, where would you go?" Not back to her husband's family. They had thrown her out once. Not to his mother's house. She had just heard exactly how unwelcome she was. The town, maybe. A cheap rented room. Or worst of all, the cave where he had first found her. The idea of her going back there with a newborn made his stomach twist. He switched off the light and stepped outside, locking the door by habit, even though there was nothing left worth stealing. As he walked back toward the truck, his phone vibrated. Hope flared in his chest. It wasn't her. It was a message from his assistant. The export shipment of pomelos they had harvested in a hurry before the flood was now facing serious quality complaints. The foreign buyer was unhappy. John was under pressure. The contract they had celebrated just days ago was suddenly at risk. Alex stared at the screen, torn cleanly in two. On one side was the woman he loved, and the baby he already thought of as his own, somewhere out there in the storm, maybe with nowhere safe to sleep. On the other side was the business he had built from nothing, the farmers who depended on him, the friend who had trusted him enough to sign a big contract. "How am I supposed to choose?" he whispered. He didn't want to choose. He wanted to protect both. But standing there in the rain, with one disaster in his inbox and another disappearing into the night, he felt like a man in the middle of a collapsing bridge, people shouting for help from both ends. Alex took a slow breath and climbed back into the truck. His hands were shaking as he gripped the steering wheel. "First, I look for her," he decided quietly. "Then I fix the mess I made at work. I don't know how yet, but I'll do both. Outside, the road ahead was a blur of water and darkness. Somewhere beyond the reach of his headlights, an exhausted girl held a sleeping baby and tried to convince herself she'd done the right thing by leaving. While the man who had always been praised for being calm and strong finally realized his toughest fight would be against his own fear and the price of everything he had been too afraid to say until now. Having said that, he slipped past and went straight into the room. The warm water flowed down his body, but the cold in his heart remained. After bathing, he fell onto the bed, intending to close his eyes for a while, but unexpectedly fell asleep until almost noon. The phone had been ringing in the living room all morning, but he was too tired to bother picking it up. Only when he woke up did he quickly reach for the phone and look at the screen. Missed calls popped up one after another. John, Ms. Lan, the warehouse manager. Alex's heart sank. Oh no. He called John back immediately. On the other end of the line, John's voice was not as relaxed as usual, but instead a little tense. Alex, you finally picked up. What's going on over there? I've been calling since last night and I can't get through. Alex rubbed his temples, trying to keep his voice calm. Sorry, I had something urgent to do last night and couldn't listen. What's wrong? Is there a problem with the grapefruit? John exhaled. Yes, it was the case of the last batch of early ripening grapefruit. When the goods arrived at the warehouse, we checked them again and found that some of the grapefruit were not as good as the sample. Some were unripe, some had bad skin, and some boxes were waterlogged. We are trying to handle it, but the importer is having a hard time. They have been calling us non-stop since this morning. Hearing that, Alex felt another headache coming on. He remembered this batch of grapefruit very clearly. Fearing that another storm was coming, he was forced to cut it early, collecting all the good fruit to sell to John, at least to keep the cash flow and reduce the loss for the farmers. He had thought the quality would only be a little less beautiful, but he had not expected it to be so closely scrutinized. What exactly are they complaining about? Alex asked, his voice low. First, the percentage of grade A fruit is not as promised. Second, the uniformity of fruit size and peel is not up to standard. Third, they said that if the first batch is not standard, they will worry about the following batches. Alex, this is the first export order. If they lose trust from the beginning, it will be very troublesome. Alex was silent for a few seconds. Behind him, his mother stood leaning against the door, looking at her son, worried and wondering what was so serious. He turned his back, leaned his hands on the table, and took a breath. Okay, let me review the whole process, make a specific report, and then proactively propose a solution. I won't avoid it. John was still not reassured. There's one more thing I have to be honest. The client mentioned the possibility of canceling the contract if they're not satisfied with the way you handled this. I'm trying to defend you, blaming the storm and flood for the most part, but if you don't show goodwill, it'll be hard for me to protect you forever. The two words, cancel the contract, fell on Alex's ears like a stone. The contract with John was more than just an order. It was a door for the agricultural products of this region to go out to the world. It was the work he had built up all year. At this moment, everything seemed to be coming at once. Tu Na had disappeared. Henry was nowhere to be found. The family was stressed, and now work seemed to be collapsing too. I understand. Tell them for me that we accept responsibility. I will send an official email, along with a proposal to compensate for the damage to this shipment. I only ask them for one thing. Give me another chance on the next shipment. If they are still not satisfied, they will cancel the contract, and I have nothing to complain about." There was a few moments of silence on the other end of the line. Then John replied, "Hearing you say that makes me feel more secure. I will step up and talk to the customer, but you have to be decisive. I can't promise they will soften up, but at least they will see that you're not avoiding them." Alex softly said, "Yes," and hung up the phone, his hands still shaking slightly. He stood still for a moment, his eyes staring blankly out into the yard. His mother walked over and asked worriedly, "What's the matter, son? What's the fuss again?" Alex swallowed. "Yes, the export partner is complaining about the first batch of grapefruit. They are even considering canceling the contract if we don't handle it properly." His mother sighed. "Work is already tiring, and you still have that girl thing going on up there. You have to figure it out. If Mom looks at you like this, she'll be confused too." Talking about Tu Na, Alex's chest ached again. Her face was wet from the rain last night, the letter left behind, the cold DNA. Everything collided in his mind like a jumble. On one side was the girl he loved, carrying her child and going somewhere unknown. On the other side was a big contract that could collapse at any moment. "I have to go to the grapefruit garden first, then stop by the factory." "Other things later, Mom," Alex said quickly, reaching for the car keys. His sister came out of the kitchen, still not willing to drop the old topic. "Are you planning to take care of everything before thinking about the three of you? What if she takes the child away?" Alex stopped for a moment, but did not turn around. He just said softly, as if talking to himself, "If I don't finish this, even if I find Tu Na in the future, I won't be qualified to protect her." Then he walked straight out the door. On the way to the grapefruit garden, the rain stopped and then drizzled. But in Alex's mind, the storm was still raging. He had to calculate the words to email to customers, and also had to think about what would happen to the hundreds of farmers behind him if he lost the contract with John. And somewhere, the image of Tu Na carrying Henry in the rain last night, although he couldn't see it with his eyes, was still clearly present in his imagination, making his heart even heavier. In this episode, the peaceful farm night turns into Alex's worst nightmare. After a long day of fighting to save his business from a storm-damaged pomelo shipment and an angry export buyer, Alex returns to the farm only to find Tu Na and baby Henry gone. The bed is empty, their clothes are missing, and on the table lies the DNA result he dropped. Next to a farewell letter. In it, Tu Na thanks him for everything, apologizes for bringing trouble to his family, and decides to disappear so he can still have a future without her. Crushed by guilt and torn between love and responsibility, Alex realizes he's on the verge of losing both his biggest contract and the only family his heart has ever truly wanted. Now he must decide, chase the woman he loves or stay and hold together everything he's built.